That's the fun.
I'll go sometimes during.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll fly.
You're not sitting in that chair. There's little Reagan, there's little Steve.
Billy Ray, you want to
We
attend?
pulled up now.
Yeah.
I mean, there ain't much to it, really, but
Well, no, I'm just gonna give one first, so Chris has one too.
I have to sign some. That is like, I have to,
I wouldn't be able to sign that with.
Tom, I'll apologize.
well, they give it to you on the side.
Yeah.
Sign
Do
this.
I have to get Chris in church?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Christian, I sit there and we're looking over at him, and he just slowly does not
I got a
think.
6-year-old. Well, he's
I guess he feels staring at him because he usually wakes up.
Yeah, our little boy turns 2 next month, and we just had a girl 3 weeks ago, so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's why I look like I haven't slept.
She calling the roll.
She's gonna do roll. Wait on Steve, I guess.
So that's 3 minutes.
I will. I think it is.
Thank you.
Turn the camera on, everybody stops
Will
talking.
you grab me another one of those? Please. I'm gonna let you know.
Hey, you're right. Good to see you. How's it going? Morning.
How's the new baby, Lucas?
She's good. Yeah, she's your dream. She's not the problem. The little boy's the problem. Yeah. He's traditionally been
is being recorded.
a great sleeper, but he's pulling this whole. He's about to turn 2. Our little boy. We just had a little girl 3 weeks ago. He wakes up at 4:30. Her name's Margot. He wakes up at 4:30 and says, "See Marmo, see Marmo." I'm like, dude, she's asleep. You should be too. So, yeah, but he's good, and she's been a dream. So hopefully that stays that way.
I hope your second one stays that way.
Yeah, she's been a dream. She really has.
Your second one's I say all the time, if I had my second one first, we'd have a family of 3.
Yeah.
Did they tell you why you were out of town?
Is that the
Kidnapping
boy?
at the basketball game?
Yeah, they did tell me that.
Did they also dine their father out for what they were eating?
Oh,
Because
really?
they totally dined it out to me.
They said
Yeah.
the other day, I came back there,
Oh, that's awesome.
hey, you know, Mom, when you're out of town, I mean, I think Jenny felt sorry for us, so she took us to whatever. You don't have to go to the game if you don't want.
Right now, Jenny.
I saw Sydney and I was like, hey, just come with us. And she's like, okay. And she's like, let me tell my dad. And then you hear that, you go, where are you going? And I was like, oh, we can't leave her house. It's like, come on, you guys
There
can
definitely would have been a basketball game right up here, man.
That's his training room too, right? Then I looked at the office, and she said, oh, it has to be over in that building, which was not this building.
Oh, well, there's a big Kentucky EM training too.
I know, there's a whole room of people over
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Got a lot going on today.
Yes.
do you want to attend?
I got one, but I'll take one.
Hello, sir. How are you? Yeah. Well, I did text Jill this morning too. I was like, I'm used to doing the chicks.
Well, it wasn't,
What's up, Blake?
I mean,
You
it
doing all right?
Yeah, are you?
Good. Blake, you can sit wherever. That might be a good spot since we're facing this way. Yeah.
Joe Jennings is yours, and Phil
I guess it.
across the street there, brick house up on top of it, that's yours. That is yours.
Chris, are we recording?
Yes.
Are we good? Everything's on?
Yep.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Appreciate everybody being here at our February the 7th work session. This is a special call work session here at the Emergency Operations Center at 560 South Keeneland Drive, Training Room B. Appreciate everybody in attendance. At this time, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Magistrate Combs.
Here.
Magistrate Lockmuller.
here.
Magistrate Hughes.
Here.
Magistrate Lockett.
Present.
Judge Taylor.
Here, just for everybody's understanding and knowledge, this is a work session, so the only things that we can discuss is what's actually on the agenda. It has been posted with 24 hours notice following the KRS statute. So at this time, we will start with our first order of business, which is our presentation of our economic development analysis. Previous court had hired MWM Consulting, probably, Lucas, 6 months ago.
Yeah, towards the fall of
Yeah.
last year, roughly right around there.
We put that in the budget, I guess, Glenna, for this fiscal year budget. And so this is a presentation today explaining to this governing body what the outcome of that analysis is. And just to give a little bit of backstory on this, we've had our challenges countywide financially. A lot of that's due to state mandates, or the things that we shall provide services for. And through the past experiences and decisions the court has made, we've realized that in order for us to be able to increase our revenues, we must grow our tax base. And one of the ways we can grow our tax base is through industry, creating jobs. Our local taxpayers don't want to pay more in taxes. And so an opportunity that we have here is to potentially invest in our county. We are a county that is unlike any other counties, really, along the I-75 corridors, that we have 7 interchanges. We have 7 exits. The only other county in Kentucky from Tennessee to Ohio is Fayette, and they have 7 as well, which I will say, I always say that Ironworks Pike, I think, is more of a Scott County exit than it is a Fayette County exit. But that gives them 7 as well. And so we have great opportunity here in looking at the future of the Bluegrass Army Depot and the D Mill going away. Not the Bluegrass Army Depot going away, but the D Mill coming to an end. This gives us a lot of opportunity to grow our county tax base through industry. And so we've got a great team that we've been working closely with that's going to present to us today to just give us an overview of the findings and Chris, data of what we need to do moving forward. So Ethan, appreciate you. Lucas, appreciate you and your team.
No relation. Ethan.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
A lot of these people do know Ethan Witt.
Yeah, good
this
guy.
is Lucas Witt.
Yeah, good guy. I always spell our name the same way, but no relation. Thank you, Judge. My name's Lucas Witt, and this is Audrey Grace Hacker and Elizabeth Carter on our team. They'll be chiming in as we go through the presentation, and I would certainly appreciate any feedback and questions. But let me set the stage with who we are, and what we do, and hopefully why we were hired to provide our feedback on the opportunity here. So we're a management consulting company out of Lexington, Kentucky, predominantly doing a significant amount of economic development work across the state for communities and corporate clients alike, helping them find where they're going to build their facility due to our community knowledge and relationships. I got my career started at the state working for the Cabinet for Economic Development back in the day, and it kind of propelled me into doing what we're doing now. We also have a full service real estate company that makes us unique in what we do. So our hope is that provides unique perspective on both sides of the deal. And we've had the privilege, in my opinion, of doing a significant amount of work in Madison County, predominantly when we started the company in Berea. They took a chance on us 3 or 4 years ago, and we've had the opportunity to do a lot of work down there. And most recently, working on the D Mill project that the judge mentioned, the Bluegrass Ad, the Area Development District, hired us to help develop an analysis of analyzing those nearly 2,000 workers and their occupations and their wages and their rollout schedules and what type of industries would be well suited to come in to backfill. So this analysis, I think, piggybacks off of that. And so again, hopefully that provides a perspective of who we are and the work that we've done here. I'm a Lexingtonian, but I'm also a realist. Lexington's probably not going to get any more or a ton more land for development, specifically in the industrial area. So I think tertiary markets surrounding Lexington have a significant opportunity depending on what they want to do, right? So I think Madison County is first on that list. So that sets the stage a little bit. What we'll do now is kind of go through these slides, and please feel free to ask questions as we go. I think it's important to set the stage with data and how we try to make informed, calculated decisions. And so to provide perspective of the current market right now in economic development and industrial activity, we've pulled some numbers from a couple of different resources. Really throughout 2022, this says January to July, but these numbers really remain true throughout the year. The average project consisted of roughly $60 million in capital investment and over 100 jobs, right? That trajectory, as you would imagine, the job numbers have started to decline a little bit. Projects are becoming more capital intensive and less labor intensive. But over the last couple of years, the job numbers have actually gone up just a little. So I think it's also important to note that this project, from a square footage perspective, you're probably talking between 150 to 200,000 square feet, right? So just on average, that's across the country, okay? Additionally, this next bullet point here, this is pulled from a group called the Site Selectors Guild. It's made up of roughly the top 100 consultants throughout the country. They provide a survey at the end of every single year that we follow of just their anecdotal feedback of the market and what they're seeing. So they're companies that are bigger than us, right? And they're working a significant amount of projects across the state. So think of Deloitte, think of or Site Selection Group, KPMG, companies like that. That provide just their anecdotal feedback on the market. And as you would imagine, the commercial consultants that are doing a ton of office and headquarter work, their number one challenge right now is workforce, right? It's a tough market, it's tight, it's hard to find people to come to work. But when you flip it to the industrial consultants, 96% of them said their number one barrier to success is lack of industrial ready-to-go land. Which was eye-opening to me, right? They certainly said workforce is a challenge, but what's preventing them from success across the country, really the southeastern region, which is where that industrial work happens a lot, their number one barrier to success is enough industrial land that's ready to go from an infrastructure perspective and location perspective, et cetera. So I think that speaks a lot to the opportunity for the Southeast and for Kentucky. I think it also is relevant to why the state legislature put $100 million into a pot last year for communities to be able to apply for funding to grow their economic development initiatives, et cetera. So I believe all of those actions are backed by data and relevance in the market that's going on right now. So I think that's important to state as you look into what we're presenting today. So why is that important to Madison County, right? As the judge said, you're well positioned. There's a criteria list that a lot of these consultants and companies look at before they even look at your market. And a lot of that has to do with where you're located, how many interstate exits you have other industry in the area. So you check that box, right? So that hopefully sets the stage a little bit from a data perspective. Moving on, I think it's also important to get really specific on Kentucky and what Kentucky is seeing. So what you're looking at on the top here is data that we've collected from the Cabinet for Economic Development. In a lot of cases, they're the first ones to see projects, right? Consultants or companies will send them what they're looking for and what they need, and the state will then distribute that to different areas that have that particular site or have that particular building, have that industry existence, that industry cluster that would work for whatever industry that's requesting land and or buildings in Kentucky. So again, what you see on the top is the average request that the state worked over the last 2 years. For context, these numbers are a little skewed because of the extreme activity that we're seeing in Kentucky. Now, it's important to note the outliers, like the Ford project in E-Town, have been taken out, right, to kind of help combat, what I feel is a little skewed. So that 1,500 acre project's taken out of this, right? So this is, the numbers are growing because so much reshoring is happening in America right now that we've all heard. And so many of these OEM companies like Ford are requiring their suppliers to be much closer to the area. So, but again, I think it shows where the market is going, and the projects are going to continue to be larger for probably the next 3 to 5 years as they try to catch up. I think it's...
Is this in Is this in Kentucky?
This is only Kentucky.
This is in Kentucky.
Yeah, this
all
whole,
of Kentucky.
This whole slide is all of Kentucky. Yep. Which is important, right? Take the national data, drill it down a little further to Kentucky, so we can know how we can better position whatever area you're working in, right? But then
is any of that duplicate as far as like automotive and metals?
a little bit, yes.
Okay.
There's certainly some overlap. That's a great question. It's hard for the state. You know, they work probably 600 projects a year. And there's some overlap, but yeah, there are some duplicates in there. The outliers have been taken out though, which is important. The other important piece though is if you drill down even further, because a lot of these projects never announced in Kentucky, right? We requested, they sent requests in, but they ended up in Tennessee or they ended up somewhere else, or they just never happened. So what about the projects that actually announce in Kentucky? I think these numbers become a bit more palatable, right? Those projects are on average when they land in Kentucky are acquiring 35 to 60 acres on average, and those buildings are more in the 50 to 100,000 square foot range, right? So again, it's hard to
That don't calculate for me. If you like at 246,000 for manufacturing, that's a pretty good sized building, 5 or 6 acres, or 146 acres. I mean, they got 100 acres sitting to nothing, and 5 or 6 acres under roof. What are they doing with that 100 acres that's not under roof? I mean, it sure ain't parking.
Yeah.
That don't compute to me.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, the square footage on the left and the acres on the right aren't directly correlated. So companies that reach out for a building is what you see on the left. Companies that reach out for a greenfield is what you see on the right.
Okay.
But does that answer your question? And this is a bad example because, again, I shouldn't say bad, but like Ford, for example, they acquired all 1,500 acres down in E-Town. They're only using 400 of it right now.
Yeah.
So we worked a project down in Todd County, Novelis Aluminum, for example. They're located in Berea. They acquired about 300 acres to start, but they only built on 70, right? So some of them are acquiring buffer, but not to your point, not that much significance.
Okay.
Hopefully that makes sense.
So you're just saying if they're looking for manufacturing, they're looking for an existing building. That's the square footage of the building.
Yeah, that's requested.
That's requested,
right.
Yeah.
And then
Or if they're looking for just for greenfield
to build
land,
their own space.
yeah, then they're looking for
Right.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, these requests, as you work them, like they're going to ask for the sky, and then they'll end up falling a little bit back down to earth, right? A lot of these companies start requesting, we want 200 acres, we want rail, we need X, Y, and Z. As you drill down a little further, they end up only acquiring 80 to 90 acres, and they end up not using rail, right? But they want to check the box to start, and that's why it's important to try to have as much as you can so you can compete, right? And then they drill down a little further as they go. All right, and then so again, to your point, right, if they're requesting that many acres, you want to be competitive. That doesn't mean one company is going to buy all that. So a community like Madison County should be ready to compete for 150 acres for a project, right? It's more likely that the projects that announce project by project per the data is going to be in the 20 to 40 range, right? For example, we worked Summit Polymers project last year. For perspective, nearly $40 million, 220 jobs, and that was on 33 acres, right? That's a significant project that, again, doesn't get a ton of ink in the paper because it's not $500 million, but that's a great project that I think would be certainly well suited in an area like this. And you all have won those projects in Richmond and in Berea. Okay? All right, so then you start talking about what are the steps that we traditionally go through from A to Z when we're helping communities try to identify who they are and opportunities. So first, it's the analysis. Who are your industries? How many people are they employing? What are the occupations? What are the wages? What's the cluster say about the type of companies who are located here? And also, I think it's important to note that every single year, 70 to 80% of the projects that are announced in Kentucky are from existing industries, companies who are already located here. So let's not forget, man, we've got great companies in Madison County. I mean, in some cases, global companies, and continuing to keep them happy should be priority number one, right? But competing for new projects is obviously something that every community has to do if you want to grow. So then it becomes, doing a perspective of a 30,000 foot view of, all right, what type of land is located in the community, right? Where are the utilities in relation to where that land is located? So we've done a look of, if you look across the community, and again, a lot of land, that doesn't mean a lot of it's for sale, right? But a lot of land. And what we tried to do, again, I mentioned that the state of Kentucky put $100 million into a pot to deploy to communities. They hired a third-party consultant to do the analysis of all the communities who are applying for those funds, right? And they take you through this rigorous RFI process, and included in that is an analysis of scenario utility situations, right? So for wastewater, for water, for gas and electric. And if you're going to submit this 100-acre site, how does the site respond to the 4 different scenarios of each utility? So for example, for water, they'll give you a small, medium, large, and industrial park load requirement, right? And let's say in their minds, and this is again for their definition of small is probably different of what ours would be, but their small water user is going to use 100,000 gallons per day. Is your site ready to serve that? The answer is yes. Is it ready to serve 250,000 gallons a day for a medium user? Is it ready to serve 600,000 gallons a day for a large user? And is it ready to serve 800 to 1 million gallons per day for an industrial park user? And if it's not ready, if you get to that medium-sized user and you say, our line can't service it, well, what's it going to cost to upgrade it? How long is it going to take? And do you have a plan in place? So as we get deeper into the process and you start looking at individual sites, we try to apply that same methodology to the sites that the communities are looking at, because if you want to go for funding to the state, you're going to have to go through that, and hopefully that allows you to have those answers before you start, right? And I think it's, if a community buys a site, they got to invest in infrastructure, so you want to know that obviously before you buy it, right? So we've done just a very high level of that, obviously, because who knows how this progresses, right? But then as you progress forward, you have to dig deeper before you acquire the site in terms of hiring engineering companies and spending some money. It's part of the process, and then obviously getting into the strategic marketing of the site and who you are to try to recruit industry to the area. Okay, next let's get a little bit into the workforce numbers of the community that we've analyzed, and Elizabeth is going to chime in here so you don't only have to listen to my voice.
So like Lucas said, it's important to know who your workforce is so that you can market them appropriately, whether it's to an existing or new industry. So right now, Madison County is sitting a little above 92,000 for their population. Your civilian labor force is strong. You've got 46,000 individuals with a participation rate of 61.5%. That goes up if you're just looking at the prime participation rate, which is your age group of 25 to 54. Your participation rate as a whole is going to include those that are age 16 and above. Your population that has a bachelor's degree or higher is close to 35%. This is almost 8% higher than the national average, which makes sense when you know that you have both Berea College and EKU that's right down the road. And then your median household income is right above $50,000, and your median house value is right at $161,000. So looking at your employment and wage trends, let me first say that from a data perspective, all of this is going to be pulled from a data source called Jobs EQ. It's a well-respected source amongst the economic development community, and it's also the primary source that the Cabinet for Economic Development uses for all of their projects. So as of Q2 of 2022, you had 36,970 individuals who are employed in Madison County. That was almost a 3% increase over year-end Q2 2022. You have a lower unemployment rate than Kentucky's, and the data suggests that the expansion amongst employers in the region shows that there's a healthy Madison County economy. The average worker in Madison County earns an average annual wage of $44,000 a year. That does increase when you look at the manufacturing industry, which is a primary employer in the area, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But just for comparison purposes, the annual average wage across the United States is closer to $68,000.
Is that the compensation package or just the hourly wage?
No, it's just the hourly wage.
Just the hourly.
Yes.
All right, the next piece that I want to talk through is the commuting patterns. So this is going to be different for every community across Kentucky. It's going to depend on the type of industry that you have, as well as the skill set of the individuals that live in your community. So you see this large inflow of individuals commuting to and commuting out of Madison County. Let's look first at the group that's coming into Madison County. You have 16,000 individuals that are commuting into the county for work. So they don't live here, but they do work here. You've got 15,000 individuals that both live and work in Madison County. And then you have almost 20,000 individuals that are living in Madison County but commuting out for various reasons. When you look at where they're primarily going, of the 19,700, 43% are going to Fayette County. This can be for a variety of reasons. Unfortunately, we're not able to know specifically what their skill set is or what industry they're going to. But it's a mix between those that find a better opportunity or lack of opportunity, right? Same for the group of people that are commuting in to Madison County for work. So you might have a wash with the large group of people. Some might be commuting out for a manufacturing job and others might be commuting in for a manufacturing job. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's just a lack of opportunity there for that specific type of occupation. The next piece to look at, though, if you can see on the bottom right hand of the screen, there's the last three columns. And that's going to show you a breakdown between low wage, middle wage, and high wage jobs. And the thing that you want to look at is the pattern. So for low wage jobs, you have more workers entering than leaving the community. For middle wage jobs, it's close, but you do have more workers leaving the community for middle wage jobs than entering. So you have 5,880 workers commuting in for those types of jobs and almost 7,000 workers commuting out of Madison County. Same thing for high wage jobs, same pattern. So you have more workers leaving than entering. I will say though, excluding Lexington and Louisville, right? Other communities that are similar to Madison County have a very similar commuting pattern. So this is not just specific to Madison County. It's going to be based on, again, your industry. So, for example, even if you looked at Scott County has Toyota, right? So they have a large number of individuals that are traveling into Scott County for work and a large number of individuals that are staying in Madison County for work. They still have people that are commuting out, and they're just commuting out for different types of jobs or a similar job that they might find at that plant or an automotive facility. But, again, it's not exclusive just to Madison County. Here is just a snapshot, so I don't think any of these are going to be new or shocking when you look at the primary industries in the county. Education services is a primary employer, followed by manufacturing, healthcare, and social assistance, and then you've got retail trade as well. So
where's government at? I mean,
Public administration?
Public administration, that's 7%. Start above that green one. All right, so of those top employers, what we pulled out was the manufacturing, right? So we know that educational services, again, is the largest, and that's large in part due to EKU and Berea College. Retail trade is another one, but manufacturing is one that we want to focus on today. There's approximately 5,000 individuals that are employed in the manufacturing industry. And that is regardless of whether they commute into Madison County for work or they already live here and they're residents of the county. Going back to that average hourly wage for the county as a whole, it was $44,000, right? When you look specifically at manufacturing, it's closer to $58,000 for an average annual wage. And again, this is 30% higher than the average annual wage for Madison County. Recent announcements that I'm sure we're all familiar with. So you have Hitachi, who and it made an announcement in 2020. They announced 162 new jobs, a capital investment of $86.8 million, and an average hourly wage of $27.89. And then you've got Asahi Bluegrass Forge, capital investment of $40 million and 50 new jobs, and that was in 2021. And then lastly, for perspective on your workforce, I want to talk through location quotients. So there's a lot of different data sets and types of information you can share when you're looking at your workforce. We have found location quotients to be particularly helpful in helping us understand what type of skill sets your employees have and what the workers do well, right? So a location quotient is going to show an industry in your region that has a higher concentration of employment compared to the national average. So it's simply anything over 1 is is worth looking at, because it's going to show that you have a higher concentration of employees in that particular industry as compared to the U.S. So if your location quotient is 2.0, then that means that you have a 2 times higher concentration of employees in that industry as compared to the U.S. When you look at Madison County, there's 5 that we'll look at. Number 1 is going to be your metal and product manufacturing. So for these, think of stamping. So this is going to fall under Asahi Bluegrass Forge or Thunder Manufacturing. The data shows that Madison County has a 3 times higher concentration of metal and product manufacturing employees as compared to the national average. There's 813 workers, and their average annual wage is a little higher than $51,000. The next one, not surprising, is going to be auto and auto-related, with a location quotient of 3.03. Again, Madison County has a 3 times higher concentration of auto and auto-related employees as compared to the national average. The third is chemical, with a location quotient of 1.95. This one, again, is not surprising because you know that you have BG Cap at the Bluegrass Army Depot, but another company that would fall under chemical would be Sherwin-Williams. And then the last 2 that we'll mention are machinery manufacturing with a location quotient of 1.72 and education of 1.64. So using these data points, we can say that Madison County is well positioned from a workforce perspective to attract the industries that were mentioned above as compared to the average national standard. If one of these types of companies came to show interest in locating in Madison County, we could show that there's a suitable workforce to meet their needs.
Ciao, Elizabeth. Any other questions for Elizabeth on the workforce piece? So next what we'll do is talk through a couple of different rough case studies, right? These numbers would certainly need to be refined when you start talking about sites and specifically sites, but I think it's important to, or helpful to go through, here's what a rough example would look like, right? So again, before you would get further along, you would want to go through all of these different areas of criteria, right? We talked about the utilities already, and location, and topography, and optics, right? What we mean by optics is that when you pull up, what's the curb appeal like for the house, right? You pull up to the site, how does it show, right? Are you surrounded by similar industry or land or a bunch of neighborhoods or commercial, right? You know, that's simply the curb appeal when you pull up, right? So Audrey Grace here is going to go through some of these numbers, but again, keep in mind that, you know, these are assumptions, and you would have to drill down a little bit further. We'll walk you through kind of how we arrived at some of these assumptions, right? But I think this should be helpful in terms of what a potential acquisition could look like if the county ever wanted to proceed with something like that, right? 100 acres is kind of a round number, so we were landed on that, right? But Audrey Grace, let's kind of take them through what each of these numbers mean.
Sure. So like Lucas said, we had to make some assumptions, so I'll kind of walk you through those. So we assumed 100 acres, round number. You'll notice that we assumed $20,000 an acre for that land. That's probably a little light, but we assumed just raw land, so not land that has any roads, just if you went out and bought a farm. So
and
about
to that point, Audrey Grace, right? Like industrial land that's has utilities to the site right now that's being marketed in the area. I think 35 to even over 50,000 an acre, right? So if we're gonna have to do infrastructure improvements, we're assuming you would obviously be able to buy it for less.
Sure. So like Lucas was also saying before, as we look at sites, we look at the utilities available on the site. So we assumed we aren't going to go out and buy a site that has no utilities available. So they're going to be in close proximity, which is where you get that 1.25 million water and wastewater infrastructure upgrades. Normally natural gas and electric will pay for those themselves. So we weren't factoring that into our cost. Road infrastructure, we're going to have to get roads to all of the buildings and things like that. And so we worked with an engineering firm in Lexington, and that's about $700 per linear foot for road. And that includes also getting the utilities to the buildings. So that would also change. It could be a little less than 2.6 million if we landed 2 really large companies instead of 1 large company and 4 smaller companies. So that would definitely fluctuate some depending on where we ended up. And then as we talked through PDI earlier, which is the $100 million of funding that the state put aside, we assumed that Madison County would get $500,000 from the state in PDI funding. This could also come from another state or federal funding source as well. It just doesn't have to be PDI. All bringing together the total land purchase with improvements to $5.35 million. As we talked through earlier, the average capital investment for new projects is about 62 million with around 100 jobs. So we assumed for that's about a 200,000 square foot building. Those costs just kind of work out to be around 200,000 square feet. For construction costs, we assumed around $96 a square foot, and this came from the local developer, MP Kelly. They gave us kind of just an estimate. Again, the average manufacturing wage is $57 million. I'll show you a graph on the next page that kind of shows how we reach $14.8 million of revenue over 30 years. Before you look at the graph on the next page, the $14.8 million is the total. So in year 30, you're not making $14.8 million a year. It's just like the total
You're
over
stacking your chips,
30
right?
years. Yeah. So you'll see on this page, year 30 shows 14.8 million. You're losing money for about 7 years. It's kind of a J curve. And then in year 7, you would break even, and from there, you would have about $500,000 in revenue per year from taxes.
Again, right, a lot of assumptions, right, but you have to consider several year build out of acquisition and infrastructure and marketing. And slowly but surely, as companies start locating, they'll be paying occupational taxes and property taxes. What's impossible for us to guesstimate that's not in there that Audrey Grace mentioned is, right, no net profit tax. What about new homes that are going to be built to service some of these clients, right, or workers, wastewater and water rates, assuming the county's going to serve that, right? So that's not included in these numbers. But, you know, theoretically, this is what a slow ramp up could look like. And again, this is showing the total revenue, not yearly revenue.
Is that based on 1% payroll tax instead of the normal 2% like the city of Richmond has?
Did we use 1 or 2?
We used 1%
We used 1.
occupational tax. Mm-hmm. And then property tax as well.
You all have done a good job of lowering your property taxes, so congrats on that.
Was the insurance premium figured in with that? Was that?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think those are the 3 that we used.
Yeah, the insurance premium, we used a very rough number since we weren't 100% sure, but
Right.
but yes, that was factored in.
Yep.
Alright. So last couple slides here. Again, another case study of a community who has had success, right? Everyone's heard of Bowling Green and their success and what they've done well. You know, it's important to note that Bowling Green is similar to Madison County in the sense of well located, close to a major city, several exits, right? But also, you know, they've got a large OEM there, right? So that helps a little bit. But this
Pretty flat too.
What's that? A little
Pretty
flatter,
flat.
a little flatter than more cars activity probably. But what we don't have is access to their revenue numbers, right? But what you see here is a gradual increase in the amount of acres that they've bought over the last 20 years, right? And you have to assume they bought more land because they've continued to make money. And, you know, listen, I think it's also important to note that I'm sure somewhere along the way that there has been challenges in terms of city and county and EDA and their structure of how do we get this deal done, but there has been a significant partnership from you know, county and city in terms of bonding money to get the deal done. It's like a business decision, as you all well know. You all build a budget every year, right? So they've done a good job of partnering together as a community to get to where they are, right? And they've invested a significant amount of money, and the rate of return is obviously also significant. So this, in our opinion, was a good example. this example isn't relevant to every county in the state, right? Not every county is well located like this. Not every county is close to a major city. So we wouldn't be showing this if we didn't think there was some similar attributes there. So they've done a really good job, and I think are a good example for individuals or communities that are located like Madison County.
You would think, us being closer to election, we'd have more advantages if we had acted on them years ago.
You would think.
Yep.
Yeah, you would think.
But you got to remember too that the county itself, I mean, county governing body, hasn't been in the recruiting business.
Wasn't saying that.
Yeah.
No.
And I mean, the last two major, I mean, besides App Harvest.
There's big
Okanite and Sherwin
differences.
Williams.
I mean, they work together down there. We all know that.
Yeah.
The university, the county,
Yeah.
the chamber,
Yeah.
the city,
Yeah.
they all go in the same direction to help each other rather than this is mine and I'm not letting you have any.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was what I was referring to.
Said pretty well. And then lastly, next steps. Obviously, you all as a governing body, decide how you would like to proceed, and there's absolutely no rush. But a couple of things that the pieces of the analyzing sites further we talked about already. Another important piece that I think you would need to consider is an industrial rate for a large user, right? To Judge's point that you haven't been in a recruitment business yet, but obviously the larger the water and wastewater users, a lot of communities provide a lower industrial rate due to their usages, right? So that's something to consider. And then all the other pieces that we've already talked about a little bit. I do believe that the state of Kentucky and even federal funding is really high on investing into sites and infrastructure right now. There's money out there available. Here in the next couple of weeks, you're going to see an announcement from the state on probably of that $100 million, about $50 million of it announced across the state to communities who applied, several of them that we had the opportunity to help. So there's money out there right now. So is now a good time? Not only because of that, but also because the market is calling for more, as we talked about at the beginning, more ready-to-go sites. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say none of it guaranteed success, right? There are empty industrial parks out there, and there's probably a couple different reasons for it. I'm fine to say this publicly because we've been involved in it. In Woodford County, the Midway Station project, when they bought that land 30 years ago, they probably didn't anticipate for it to take so long to fill up, right? And they had some development challenges at the beginning, but to their credit, the last 10 years, they've done a really good job of reinvesting into infrastructure. They got a great company like Lakeshore Learning in there that helped spur the rest of the development, and they've now sold it all, and they're debt-free. And it certainly took them a little longer than they would have hoped, but they're now reaping all the benefits, right? So, and again, we've been involved in the tail end of that one, and they've done a great job of kind of changing course and getting it to where it is today. But it's all calculated risk, and I think everybody at the table knows that. But happy to answer any questions, and thank you all for letting us be here this morning.
Thank you, Lucas. Appreciate it. Appreciate both of you all too. Everybody's hard work in this, putting all this together and researching and working with Jill and I. Comments, questions, conversation from court members.
I'd like to have a copy of the slides to digest there afterwards.
Yeah,
Sure.
It's my understanding, and I can't verify this, but Richmond Industrial Park got a site-ready spot out there, 20 acres. They want $50,000 an acre for, and it was in negotiation with a Japanese company that wanted to be located next to another Japanese company. It's right there, site-ready, and they decided not to come because, well, number one reason was workforce availability. Now, you're saying we got workforce availability, and they said we didn't. They got land. You say we're shortage of land. They got just the opposite. The land is there, but the workforce is there. And you're saying we don't have the places, but we got the workforce. But I can tell you right now, they're sitting on a piece of property that they can't sell out there in Richmond.
Yeah.
Site ready.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, Billy Ray, with his information is Kentucky.
Yeah.
It's not specific to Richmond's industrial park.
Well, I'm just
So
saying,
this
but
is-
this is Madison County
This
right
is
here.
averages.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but I just want to just, put that out there, hey.
And there's a lot
we
of
got
things.
site ready here in Madison County, we haven't been able to sell it.
And some of that might have to do too. Of course, I'm not. Some of that sometimes has to do with maybe who's at the negotiation table. I mean, there's a lot of variables when you compare to that site ready spot or somebody's industrial park, and if it's empty, if it's full, if it's.
I don't think you can take a look at one situation and put a broad stroke over everything.
Yeah.
I don't think economic development in Madison County personally has been at the forefront of the people running the county, city, and cities. Not to say that we haven't thought about it, I'm not being critical of the judge, but we have so much potential, so much in front of us that we can do. We just have to do it, not sit here and talk about it.
Yeah.
And so I don't look personally as Richmond having a piece of ground that's ready that they can't get rid of. Well, maybe they're not talking to the people. When's the last time they went out and actually visited people and tried to get them to come in rather than wait for them to be set in their lap? I don't know that's how they do business, but I'm just having come from business. You can't sit back and wait for people to come to you. You got to go get people.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little bit different mindset in the way that I think. And I think there's a tremendous amount of upside in this county and these two cities if we'll work together and if we'll get off our butts and go get the business. Sorry, I'm opinionated. But I don't apologize for it.
Look, I'll say to your point, I'm
It was a mistake.
aware of that site, and I think it will sell.
It will sell.
Yeah, it will sell. Does that mean it will sell? He's probably had that site done for a year now. He got funded through PDI in the second year, and that site will sell. It's a little different in terms of economic development, right? You could throw that site up with a real estate broker and you'd sell it really quick. Does that mean you're going to sell it to the type of company that you want that's going to create all the jobs that you want? Probably not, right? So it's a matter of what you want to accomplish in economic development. And when you want to control the site publicly, you're controlling it publicly because you want to decide who comes. And that sometimes means you say no to people. Woodford County did a lot of that, and thankfully it worked out for them because they've got some great companies there now. So I understand your point. I also fully believe that Madison County has an answer to the workforce problem that nobody else does. From the D-Mill site, where you have 2,000 workers over the next 5 years that are going to be in stages coming available. I don't know of anybody else that can tell a true story of how did Ford answer the 5,000 workers? They didn't. They built it, and the fingers are crossed that they come, and they probably will because they're Ford, right? But yeah, that site will sell. It will take a little more time than you would imagine, but it's hopefully because they're going to be patient and find the right company.
You know anything about the site ready one in Berea that MP Kelly built? Is it sold or is
very, very knowledgeable. We're helping on that. They've got 3 or 4 great companies looking at it. They only built 50,000 square feet to start, but it's expandable to 100. And they only want to lease it, right? Which is a different clientele. You have a lot of companies that wanted to buy it. They built it as an investment, right? So 3 or 4 great companies right now that are looking at it.
I mean, MP Kelly basically specking that, right?
Yeah, and that's a route you could go to, right? It's a different route. A lot of empty spec buildings out there. I also fully believe that there's an opportunity for strategic public-private partnerships in terms of public entities buying a significant amount of land and parceling off a portion of that if you want to sell it to a developer who will build buildings, because now that allows you to compete. You can answer if somebody wants an existing building without having to take a significant amount of risk, right? You at least get to sell the land, and now you lose control of the type of company that locates in that building, but you can compete for existing buildings and land. The city of Franklin down in Simpson County has done a fabulous job of that. They have bought a ton of land, retained a good portion of it, and also have sold it to a developer that have a good relationship with. They just announced a couple of weeks ago, who was it, Trader Joe's? That bought the 250,000 square foot building. I forget the company name. No, it was a EV battery supplier, Leo Kim. That was a $150 million project, 220 jobs. They wouldn't have won that project if they didn't have an existing building. So it's just like when you pull up to the car lot, you want to buy a new truck, but they only have sedans, well, you can't buy the truck, right? So that's an additional step. A lot of EDAs and IDAs, and probably in some cases for the right reason, have been resistant to partnerships in that case, right? Because obviously the developer's there to make money, but if you sell a small portion off, that construction traditionally breeds more construction, and Franklin's a great example of they've done a really good job of finding a partnership, and that allows them to compete for.
But they're down there close to that Tennessee border, and they're, you know, within an hour of Nashville, and
10
Nashville.
to 15 minutes of Bowling Green.
Yeah,
Yep.
industrial hub down there,
Yep.
especially automotive. I mean, they got tremendous industry in that.
Certainly do, yeah.
in that area.
They've done a great job. We've done a lot of work down there. We like it. Obviously, that's a great area.
It's a great area.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
love it, yeah.
How long have they been at it?
Long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope that in 30 years
Some people.
that people are talking about us like that. you
Yeah,
know,
that's a good point.
In Madison County, you know, somebody's got to make it.
I'll be dead.
Might go storm.
Huh?
I'll be dead by then.
No, you're right, and that's the tough part, right?
This
In
year's
your
gonna kill
all's shoes, and that's a tough decision. You're probably making decisions that you might not be in the seat that you're in when the benefits happen. I get it. That's tough.
But you know, if we don't think about that, if we don't do what's necessary for the young people of Madison County and those that are coming out of high school and going to trade school, going to Berea, going to EKU to have opportunity here, then shame on us. Because I won't be here in 30 years. But shame on us if we don't have some vision.
I agree. I got into this world to make it better than what I received it. And so I hope when I leave here that I can look back on that, and other people look back on that. Same for you all.
And doesn't mean you're going to be right every time.
Right.
But if you've been in business, you know what you do is you try to take the mistakes and minimize them.
Right.
Therefore, if you minimize the mistakes, you're going to have a lot of successes.
Very true.
And
So as y'all see here, recommended next steps is, you know, obviously we're not voting today, but this is a work session to discuss potential next steps. And we'd really like to know the pleasure of the court in a sense of what you've heard today. Do you feel like this is just crazy talk?
I've been called crazy before.
You know, one thing I do know, and I've said this for a while, is that financially we are not going to make it. This county's not going to make it off residential rooftops. We're not. And anybody that wants to debate that with me, I mean, we'll get the facts out. We'll look back at property values and how much it costs us to operate the services that we shall provide for the county and how much we bring in. So I think growing our tax base is how we're going to be able to increase our revenues and continue to provide great services to our citizens and to provide a better quality of life each and every year. So we do have a decision we need to make at some point, but in getting to that decision, I need to make sure that the fiscal court members are on board with taking that next step, you know.
I think this is our only way forward. I mean, like you said, we can't make it off rooftops, and I don't want to set back for posterity's sake and, you know, let every other county around us benefit from, you know, making these decisions. Watching everybody else grow while we sit back and do nothing. I think it's, for me, it's our only step forward.
And I think we are positioned really well, you know, when you think about, we really do have two county exits at the north end, 97 and 95, and with as Lucas mentioned earlier about Fayette County and their urban service boundary not growing, I think we're positioned really well to benefit from that. So, anyone else before we move on to the next order of business that's on the agenda today?
Well, I would just like to say, Judge, that I would like to see us move forward too. You know, we had some vision when we went after App Harvest, and they weren't the only company that we looked at. But because of a lot of the things that you've discussed earlier here, we weren't selected. We were passed over because we didn't have things that were ready to go. And, you know, we've got the school boards on board with us, you know, they've got the vocational schools, if that's what you wanna call them now, they're just cranking out. They've got an excellent program down there that has people that they could supply straight to some of these jobs if we could get them to come. And, you know, I would like to see my grandchildren stay here in Madison County. And so, you know, I'm for going forward, especially when it's to come to the part of the next round of PDI funding. You know, that money's not gonna be there forever. There's $50 million sitting there, it's not gonna be there forever.
All right. Anybody else? Any other comments?
Thank you all.
I appreciate y'all a
Yeah.
lot. Thank
Thank
y'all
you.
very much. Yep. While we're setting up for our next one, I don't know if anybody needs a restroom break, but I do. So if everybody can just be quiet.
So there's gonna be a break.
Yes.
You're always in a break.
Or I can get it from I'd be happy to email it just out.
I have one of those too.
Oh, she's got
Yeah.
some. Thank you, sir. She's keen for
Tom, we're gonna, hey, if you want, we can put it in
No,
Dropbox.
I'm fine.
If you want us, we can put them in Dropbox if y'all prefer.
I'll take
I think
those.
we're gonna-
She's got plenty of copies here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sometimes we don't like to kill trees.
Yeah.
Does anybody else need one?
Everything's already dead.
Did it feel good comments?
Maybe I'll see you after the game. Yeah. I'll have to yell at you. Call it for the other
If you're
team.
gonna yell, then don't.
I know. Yeah, you know.
Hey, it won't be the first time.
You know who we're.
Come on, Brett. You're blind.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, man, you too. Yeah, glad to hear the family as well.
Yeah, you as well. Congratulations.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
We've met before.
My father-in-law's Bill Pickett.
Yes, I know.
That's his daughter.
Oh, you're his daughter?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, know him very well. You spend any time with him on the lake?
Oh, all the time.
That's what I thought.
Last 20 years.
Yeah, well, he's a good one.
Not enough in Dylan Barbie's mind, but
Oh,
we're
he's down
definitely
there
down
every
there a
day.
lot.
I was gonna say, you will make sure and tell him I said hello. I saw him at the Lexus party at Christmas time.
Yeah.
Oh, did you? Was it Toys for Tots? Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell him you said hello.
They're special people.
Yeah. They're good in-laws, I'll tell you that much. Yeah.
That beats the hell out of the alternative.
That's right.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you.
I'll show you around. It can be confusing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Dave, you need one? No, got one. Thank you. I'm doing good. Good to see you, brother.
As if I enjoyed looking at your picture the other day.
Well,
Some of those guys have changed just a little bit. Your name to a picture.
you know, I wasn't on Facebook, and then they told me I had to get on it. So I tried to temper myself on Facebook compared to other situations that I'm in. So I tried.
You coffee?
No. Oh yeah.
You want some? Hand me a cup. I'll get it.
Well, I'll go with you. I need to walk. We do that every year. We get together every year. And of course, we lost GJ about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Doing fine.
Let's see what Chuck called.
Chris, you proactive to make us copy your slides?
No.
Oh, goodness gracious.
He is anti-paper now.
Now,
I was like, hasn't he always
I've
been
been
away?
anti-paper since the
Yeah,
beginning.
not now, I just meant always. I kill him, I'm a paper.
I'll send you the link.
Or I like mine, there's no paper in mine.
Photograph.
Everything, I mean, everything we do. They're like, why can't you take your computer? I'm like, because when the computer crashes, I'm supposed to look at the judge and say, sorry, I don't have all my
Yeah,
bills.
so when my auditor asks, I'm like,
Can't get it because his computer won't
yeah.
work.
I'm like, no, I want a piece of paper.
You know, we got around 6 o'clock or something. It's like,
Yeah.
there's no way we're
Yeah.
moving those back up.
Yeah.
Get worse this.
Your brother stepped into it.
I like when
God.
I say, yeah, until you get the shit.
Without your
Trying to
brain.
call your office for lunch.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Chris said he
I hate that for him to do daggone it. That's just.
You'd be like a shelter every other day. If like, it doesn't.
He's had one of Matt Jones posted.
Yeah, I got your text. Did you get a call from Dr. Goss? He called my office too. Well, we did because I'll tell you the whole story. We went out there because Scott wanted me to go. Scott wanted me to go look at it. He's got concerns about what they've done.
Right.
They didn't get no permit.
I know.
They didn't get nothing.
So how do we work through it? So
I don't know if you can. But if you really follow a rule, we measured the site distance providers, and it's not that much. I mean, this is one big spot. I mean, we should be taking care of it. But we'll work through it one way or the other. All right, welcome back. We have everybody back, so appreciate everybody allowing us to take a little bit of a break. At this time, we will get moving with our next order of business, which is the presentation of broadband expansion proposal. We've been working quite a bit towards over the last couple of years, and I'm not going to get into a big spiel because Chris, I think, is part of your presentation today. But Chris Israel, our Chief Information Officer, is going to be presenting to us on our deployment strategy about getting broadband quality, affordable. It's been our mission, hasn't it? Since we've been working on this last couple of years, is to get quality, affordable broadband deployed to anybody in Madison County that needs access to it, correct, or wants access to it.
Wants access to it, that's right.
Yeah, and so at this time, I'll turn it over to Chris to give us this presentation today.
There's probably not a better conversation to have post-economic development than broadband. All those people today, they don't just want water and sewer, right? What do they want with it? Broadband. Internet. So the judge says it all the time. It's going to directly at some point impact property values if you cannot provide internet to these folks. In a county like we are, not having an internet where everybody's available is kind of shameful. So hopefully today we can come to a plan to solve that problem for these folks and finally get something that I think the judge and I had some conversations early on in his first term with how we could solve broadband. So even that far back, we've been talking about how we can get internet. Now, it was a completely different conversation back then than it is today because obviously now we have ARPA funds and all the other dollars that are there that could be used because of the COVID pandemic. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Our nice Madison County Connect logo we developed there. So why broadband? We talked about it a little bit, right? It's now essential. As essential as water and electric and sewer. We knew it was a problem back in 2014, 2015. It's kind of always been a problem since the age of the internet, right? The COVID-19 pandemic, of course, has driven that point home for us. We had kids at home trying to learn. We had people working from home. Glenn and I have gone around and around, and she doesn't live in Madison County, but when she was trying to work from home, she was having trouble where she lives with the internet. We had lots of other employees that had issues, right, where if it was real slow, it just didn't quite work well for them. We have doctors and nurses, you name it, that were working from home. Your citizens deserve it, right? If you want to have the county that's on the forefront and progressive and on lots of things, which I think everybody in this room would agree that's what we want to do, they got to have quality internet in order to basically survive in this world, right? We do have a once-in-a-lifetime funding source through ARPA. As you all know, or maybe you're learning, there's lots of restrictions around how to use that ARPA funding. Broadband is one of those things that you can use ARPA funds on. There are restrictions on how you use it, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but we're in a really good place. So economic benefits are coming off of a presentation about economic development. We found a source that said that investment in broadband returns $3 to $4 to the local economy. We saw that in several universities that had done study on broadband and the impacts to their counties in which they had enhanced rural broadband. They also stated that a failure to invest in broadband is projected to reduce your productivity by 1%. The World Bank has said 1.2% increase in real per capita GDP growth by investing in broadband. So we're just coming off an economic development conversation. All of those things point you in the direction of rural broadband expansion, providing quality, affordable broadband to everyone. So we've already said it, but access to high-speed internet now is as important as electric and water and sewer, right? So kind of like if I pull up to a hotel and it says free TV, I'm not staying there, right? It's kind of that level thing, right? People are expecting to go move into these locations and have water, electric, sewer, and internet. And if you can see, you take a look here, all that red area where you have citizens that are going, they don't have internet, right? They might have sewer and water.
And Chris, so that's saying 1.2% increase in your population if you invest in broadband, right?
And per capita GDP growth, so an economic advancement of 1.2% by doing that, not popular, but
Oh, not population.
not population.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
So you can see the red areas. The green areas, obviously, the depot. Clay, you have to help me out with the other glare.
Wildlife Reserve.
Berea College, the
Wildlife Reserve.
Areas where you don't have citizenry that you would worry about. The black areas will point out whether there is a Windstream, there's a Spectrum, or there's an AT&T that is already servicing that area. And obviously, you're all very aware. You can probably tell exactly what those areas are, right? Largely, the city limits of these areas do have pretty good broadband coverage. You've heard it more than once, and I know the judge's office has heard it 150 million times. I just live right there across the street from them, and they have internet. Well, they live in the city. You live in the county, and that's just how the lines are drawn sometimes. So the red area, keep that in mind. Keep a visual picture of what that looks like as we kind of move forward here. So this is pre-March 2020, pre-pandemic kind of numbers. FCC data, we'll call it, which if you've heard anything about the FCC data is not very good. They couldn't really tell you who had what or how good it was or how bad it was. But this is what it looks like.
This is what it looked like.
This is
Everybody
what it
understands
looks
that,
like.
right?
Yep.
Pre-COVID.
Pre-2020, pre-COVID. So go ahead and scroll down a little bit. So where did we start? How did we get to where we are today? So March 2020, July 2021, like we said, we spent a lot of time talking about this. We tried to move really fast, and as soon as we started to move really fast, we learned one important fact, and the judge makes fun of me about this all the time. We didn't have any data. We didn't have any data that was worth anything. It didn't help us. It confused us. As you know, we went through the RFQ process, and when we talk about that, when we got numbers back from those people about how many people needed to be served and didn't need to be served, they weren't off 1,000 or 500 people. We're talking 10,000 people. They'd say there's 10,000 people that need to serve. They say there's 15. They say there's only 4, right? There's this huge discrepancy. So just keep that in mind as we talk through here. So this map is based off of FCC data. When we saw this and decided that the FCC data was so bad, we decided to do our own analysis. We wanted to go down and use our own data, figure the answer out for ourselves. So what we did, and at that point we were trying to do a fixed wireless system, which means we wanted to do wireless to the customer. And what we did is use CSEP's 9 towers that were positioned around the county, and we took a 5-mile radius around each one of those towers, and we found every road inside of that radius, and we picked an address from every street inside that radius. And what we did is we had people go through, and they went to AT&T, Spectrum, Windstream, and MetroNet's websites, type those addresses in to find out whether or not they could be served or if they already were served. Compile all that data together. And what we came up with is 5,861 people at that point were without internet. Couldn't get service from any of the 4 major providers. Now that's 17% of the structures, not people, structures in the county cannot get internet. The important thing to notice, which the map dictates, 96% of that 5,861 are in the county. They're outside the incorporated areas, right? Obviously the map shows you that. We all can see that, right? So in the county,
5861 is structures.
Structures, not
Yep.
people. Yep. And if you want to do the math, you can take 2.5 times that to get, if you wanted a population number. That represents Judge asked for this, and we put it in there. Look at us go. Represents approximately 15% of the county's population that does not have access to the internet. So when you hear people say we don't have internet, it's the loud minority saying they don't have internet, right? Not to say it's not deserved, because it is, but just looking at the numbers, right, a county of 93,000 people, you have 5,600 of those structures, which could be somewhere in the neighborhood of what? You're the math guy. 30-something thousand people.
No, it'll be 15.
15,000 people.
13 to 15, yeah.
So there's where we started. March of 2020 is when broadband really became the hot topic that everybody was trying to solve. And then as time goes on, what starts to happen, there's a problem, money starts to be dropped. So the first thing that actually happened, you can scroll down, is RDOF. Oh, I forgot we were talking about this. Jill slid this one on me. So I just want to take a quick moment to talk about technology, because most of you were not here when we had the conversations leading up to today. Why didn't you do mobile broadband? Just give them a hotspot. Have them hotspot off their telephone. It doesn't work. Okay? It does not provide the correct level of speed and internet quality in order to work from home, watch videos, and stream. How many of you actually have cable TV anymore, right? You're watching it through Netflix, Yahoo. Yahoo, is that one of them? No. Hulu. Fixed wireless. We actually looked at a solution like this. The problem is that a lot of these grant fundings do not pay for fixed wireless solutions. They'll pay for the back-end infrastructure, but they will not pay for what they call customer facing. So that means the equipment on the customer's house to the front end of the tower. They would pay everything from the back end to the internet provider, but that doesn't help you, right? Then it's on your shoulders or the customer's shoulders to pay for it. Satellite. We actually looked at Starlink. We had a conversation with Starlink. I actually had a pretty in-depth conversation with Starlink through the regional broadband initiative, which was Lexington, Fayette, Jessamine, Woodford, us, and a few others. We actually sat as part of that committee and reviewed some stuff. And one of the people said, "I don't understand all this. Just that guy's got satellites in the air. Just do that." Well, it's almost worse than mobile broadband from your cell phone company. Yes, it can be quality when it comes to speed, but it's not going to be quality when it comes to weather. Yes, it's in a different orbit than it is a lot of other satellites, but it's just not going to be considered. And even when Starlink people say, yeah, it's not really designed to solve a rural broadband problem, it's a pretty good indication that we should not be looking at it. Will it help some people? Absolutely. At one point I was part of the pilot and paid the $100, but since then it's been so long, I don't think there's not anybody in Madison County I think that's hooked up to it. There may be one or two. DSL is what they call a digital subscriber line, which is very old technology. That was the copper days when you would connect it with a phone line and we'd all go ding, ding, ding. Right. I grew up with that. And the other one is cable. So there's some controversy around cable and fiber, right? Spectrum, everybody knows, is a cable-based operator. They provide internet over cable and they also provide it over fiber. Most people have moved away from copper. It's because of the speed capacity issues that they could have. But on the other side of the token, they're at DOCSIS 7, I believe, which is the technology they could do 6 gigabit per second over cable. So what you'll see later as we get into the conversation is that Spectrum is actually making investments in their copper network to provide better internet to the existing people already. What's the answer? The answer is fiber to the home, fiber to the premise is what they call it. It's basically future-proof. The glass is not going to control the speed of the internet or the quality, right? It's the optics, the technology on the back end of that equipment that actually pushes that through. So today you can push somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 gig through a single strain of glass, if you've ever seen it. In 10 years we may be at, 1 million. Who knows? The simple fact is that everybody wants to push 1 gigabit per second. That's what everybody needs at their house. That's not really reality. Because A, people aren't going to pay for it, and B, they just don't need that kind of quality. What do they need? They need somewhere between 150 to 200 meg. Why do you see that now? You see people like Spectrum, their base packages, when you get into them now, are 250 to 300 meg per second, right? And that's good enough for 4 or 5 people to be streaming videos, doing work, what have you. Now, if you've got a large family, obviously the more people, the more bandwidth you're going to use, especially if you're trying to stream a video and play Xbox and do all the other things that you want to do. So just a quick conversation about technology and why we feel like fiber to the premise is the correct answer. Good. So we had the funding come up, right? We're in the middle of the pandemic. Internet is an issue. The federal government, FCC, comes out with a program called the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund program, which basically they opened up and said, hey, here's a bunch of money. You all bid on it. You tell me, here's this area. You tell me how much you're going to charge me to put service into those people. And all these different entities applied for it. Your Spectrums, your Windstreams, your Metronets, and your AT&Ts of the world. There's other people like Allpoints. There were people like Verizon. Lots of providers in some capacity put money on the table to bid for these. Why is the map not coming up? You're fired. But anyways, so the first RDOF program was announced through the FCC. Now, when we get the map to come up here, you'll see the colored areas. There were 1,278 locations inside of Madison County that were awarded through one of the providers. It was either Spectrum or Windstream. They were the two that won. So the blue areas on the map, you can see now, we're given RDOF funds. This is the Windstream area, and then above would be Spectrum's pool of money. So 1,278. So you've chipped away. Now the county has did nothing for this part of it. This was a federal opportunity where these ISPs went after the money themselves to solve the problem, and they did. And as we go through the conversation, you're going to see one of them had a pretty good idea and a pretty good plan as they move through this whole process. Not sure if they had insider information or not, but they do have a pretty good idea of it. So
some of these people are already online.
Yep, some of these people are currently. Now, Manager Bakken knows very well that there's a 10-year time frame on this money. They had 10 years to spend it, 10 years to build it out. Very late in the project, we learned that the RDOF fines for not completing their builds are like $5,000, $3,500, not per occurrence, not per structure, not per one you missed, $3,500. So you got $300,000 to build this whole road, but you decided, you know what, I'm not doing it. It's a $3,500 fine. That's way cheaper than putting fiber in the ground. So just keep that in mind as well. So approximately at this point, 12% of Madison County structures are unserved. So you had that 5,600 number, or 5,800 number, has now dropped down to 4,500. And 95% of those people now, or 4,200 of them, are in the unincorporated areas. We keep pounding on that. Again, we're solving the problem in the unincorporated areas of Madison County. All right, so those are in progress and being built. And pretty much Spectrum has said they're going to honor it and finish it. Through our field study that we did do, we did find that Windstream may not be completing all of theirs, but they have 10 years to do it, and they're only 3 years in. So we'll see how it kind of plays out. So what happened next? The next thing is that the Broadband Task Force was established by Judge Taylor sometime in September of 2021. He appointed a few people, myself included. Bert Thomas and Dustin Heiser and Glenna was on that as well, and Manager Bakken sat in on those. We formulated an RFQ, a request for qualification. That's important to know. It was not a request for proposals. It was not a bid. It was a request for qualification. We want everybody that thinks they can provide internet to Madison County to come in and provide us why they think they're the best suited to provide internet. We participated in the Regional Broadband Initiative, which we've already talked about a little bit. That was Fayette and Jessamine. All of us sat around a table at Bluegrass Ad and had conversations about how to solve the broadband issue. Is there anything we can do to get synergy amongst the region? Is there any reason if we all pick the same? Is there any really cost savings? The answer to that story is not really. There was really no synergy by everybody doing the same thing to save money. And again, we're talking to the players of AT&T, Spectrum, Metronet, Windstream. We even had, it was Cincinnati Bell, I guess they're called Alta Fiber now, was bought out by Alta Fiber. They were at the table as well talking about it. Didn't matter if we all kind of tied together. It didn't really change the amount of money that was going to be spent. So what were the goals of the task force? Evaluate and understand the existing infrastructure. We know the FCC data was bad. We did our own analysis. We started we signed an NDA with Spectrum to see where their footprint is. We tried to get as much data as we could to figure out exactly where these people needed to be served. Because at this point, we still really don't have a very good idea.
I mean, you said like those blue areas, those were awarded, but not necessarily been serviced and may not even be serviced.
Correct. Yep.
So it's
now Spectrum has told us to face that they are going to honor their RDOF commitment, and they will do it faster than the 10 years. Now,
they've told us that
Will
by
they-
the end of 2024.
2024ish, they expect to be done with it, because you're going to see somebody up there was paying attention when they kind of did all of this. You're going to see it. It'll be obvious when you look at the map, kind of what their game plan was, and why I would believe that they're going to finish it.
There's a lot of providers too that just want to get their pictures in the paper and pat themselves on the back that aren't necessarily going to finish.
Yep.
I won't mention any names, but obviously
There's a few of them, right?
Yeah.
And they all are. And they tell you one thing in face, and you see something in the paper is different, right? Bringing quality and affordable broadband. We really can't control the cost aspect of it, but making sure when you negotiate with them that there are plans that can be affordable to low-income earners is important, and that is certainly taken care of in what we're going to present to you today. Creating competition was one thing that we wanted to do. Can you bring another provider in? How do you put these people against each other to get the best outcome for Madison County? This task force did that extremely well. So much that all of these vendors come back, boy, we really like your tactic, right? Like you really made us think. And you're going to see here in a minute why things kind of change, because when you kind of pitted them against each other, all of a sudden they're all out building fiber everywhere without your money, right? It was an interesting tactic that we took, and patience and perseverance has certainly paid off for us in the long run, as you'll see as we get to the bottom of this. So we released our RFQ out for them. We received 5 responses. Obviously the big 4, well, it was the big 3, AT&T, Windstream, Spectrum, All Points Broadband is big in Virginia, who was someone we looked very closely at. And the 5th one was a company called Tilson, which was nothing more than a management consultant. They wanted to come in and help you find somebody to help you, which we were like, no thanks, we got our own people. We'll move on with ourselves. So we deemed 4 of those as qualified. That gave us the ability to negotiate with these groups, talk through it with them, and try to figure out what the best solutions will be. All right. So, what was next? Well, we still had no idea who was supposed to be served. We had AT&T telling us there was 10,000. You had Spectrum telling there was only 2,000. We had all these numbers that never made any sense, and I've never seen the judge's head spin, but it was spinning because we'd sit to them back to back to back, and you listen to these people, and you're like, they just told us there was 8,000, but now this guy says there's only 3,000, and this guy says there's 4. Like, we're not doing anything until we figure this out. So here comes All Points Broadband with a pretty good plan. It's going to increase the competition. You're going to bring a new provider in, right? All those things sound great. They want our business so bad, they say for $1,000 we'll come in and do a field survey. We'll walk, we'll figure out where everybody's at, and we'll get you the data you need to make a decision. So we signed on to that for $1,000, the last fiscal court did. $1,000 for them to come in and do a boots on the ground walk, use the data and the knowledge that they have. They're very knowledgeable in the market, and they know exactly what they're looking for. And that's where we got the data about Windstream, where it looked like their building had stopped short of what their RDOF was, and only somebody with a trained eye would know exactly why that was on the pole, and that tells me that on the pole means that's the end of it, right? So that's kind of the expertise you got for $1,000. So what did they do? They did the field survey. They came back to us and said, this is what it looks like. Then they launched a website tool. We called it the Madison County Connect tool. That actually allowed citizens to get on there and go and say, hey, I'm not served, right? If you don't know about me, hello. Now, you can ask Robin and Jill, how many times have you answered the phone for somebody that said they don't have internet? I would even hate to count at this point. The letters, the petitions that come from citizens about they don't have quality, affordable broadband. Okay? So we put this tool out and further narrowed down these pockets to figure out exactly where we were. Okay? So at that point, we kind of conducted our own intense analysis of their data. We got some data from AT&T. We had All Points that had some data that we could use against it. We used our own data. And one thing that we did that a lot of people do not do is we actually used our 911 structure data, because that is the most correct information that this county has, is where those folks live from 911. So with Clay coming on board, we were actually able to really tighten that down way tighter than what we had in the previous group of people helping us out. So thanks to him for coming in and be able to actually have the analytical mind to understand all of the data and put things together and subtract and add and remove when you have to, right? So what we feel like today is we have a pretty great understanding of where exactly these pockets are that people are not served, and we have a game plan on how to get them there. Once we kind of got through here, go ahead and roll on. We'll let it pool up here. So the next portion that happened was the state's KBDF funding, Kentucky Broadband Deployment Fund. This is the state's pool of money that they put in to solve rural broadband, right? I don't remember the amount, millions of dollars that was put in there, 200 maybe, something like that. Spectrum was one of the first ones to write a grant, and they put it in, unbeknownst to us. We didn't know at the time that they had even applied for funding. But the judge got a phone call and said, hey, you probably should support this, and we decided it was a good idea for Madison County, because we don't care how they get served, we just want them to get served. It doesn't have to be us, it doesn't have to be our money, we want them served. So Spectrum actually went and applied for 1,247 homes in Madison County, which represents the yellow areas. Those are KDBF funds, as I will refer to them as we move forward. As you can see there, now you have 5% of Madison County structures are unserved, and 69% of those, or 1,745, are in the unincorporated areas. So now you see these fancy little red pockets outside of the red and blue. So when I talked about they had a pretty good game plan of why I feel like Spectrum is going to... why Spectrum is going to complete their RDOF. They took federal money and built all the way out, right? They then used their own state money that they got with a little bit of investment on their own to build the next block in, right? Now all of a sudden they've kind of grouped it in. So when I said they had a game plan, they had a pretty good game plan. Now something that's startling here, I don't know if you've noticed it.
That's a good magistrate right there.
That's my district.
Yep, a little startling, right? Like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? You got this big red area, which there are some homes in and around this area. There's some sparse homes up in there, right?
Is that Valley View area?
Yeah.
Like Baldwin?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's some homes in the one corridor, but then once you get out real far in the fingertip, it starts to drop down. So KDBF, that was won by Spectrum and Spectrum only. That was a state grant. We wrote a letter to support them to say, hey, if you're going to give them money, we support it. Great. We don't have to pay to get them fixed. So that was 100% funded through state funding and their own investments. So keep in mind, for every portion is where they have grant money, this provider is putting in their own money as well as an investment. So now we know this. So now where do we really sit? So let's pull down to the current unserved map here. So we're going to slide that over to the right there. This is what it looked like March of 2020, pre-pandemic, right? The best of our ability to tell where people had internet and where they did not have it, right? We're going to talk about RDOF was funded, KDBF was funded, and we're going to slide this ruler to the left here, and you're going to see that turn blue. The blue areas are now where people are either contracted to have service or have already gotten service or had service to begin with, right? So the city limits obviously turn blue because they largely were served to begin with. Your RDOF areas on the outskirts were funded, and then the KDBF kind of filled the intern. The other thing that happened, like we said, is we pitted them against each other. Well, as soon as AT&T found out that we thought we were going to do something with another company down here in the south, guess what they started doing? Building like wildfire up here, which basically took away half of what we were proposing we thought we were going to do. They took away half of it because we just put them against each other. Patience and perseverance. Is it taking us a long time to get here? Have we spent any money? We spent $1,000 to get this far. So now you're at 6% of the structures are served, or 2,244 is our estimated that is there. Clay actually took this map and can tell you on a list every single address that does not have internet. Okay? And we can give that to somebody and say, what are you going to do? So what did we do? We took that information and we went to the AT&Ts of the world, right? Because AT&T's up here. Why didn't AT&T just serve that, right? And this is Spectrum. Why didn't Spectrum just pick this up? And this is all Windstream. What's going on, Windstream? Why don't you pick it up? So we sent all that information to them, specific list. What happened was Windstream pretty much said, no thank you. We're not interested, which is an interesting position to be in, I guess. AT&T is so complicated, I don't think if you had 14 masters in an engineering degree, you'd be able to figure out why they would do it. I think the judge said your business is stupid, something along those lines. Like, that's a dumb business decision because they'll only do it if this little block has so many percent, but the block next to it can't have this. I mean, it was just ridiculous. So I took that as we're not going to do that either, right? So that leaves you with who? Spectrum. It leaves you with an all points. You have an all points and a Spectrum. All points was committed to doing
That's
this.
off the record.
What? Oh yeah, don't write that down.
Don't point that.
Don't use that word. Bad business decisions. There you go.
Yeah, I don't like them either.
There you go. So this portion, right, was what All Points was interested in funding at one point in time after the whole game kind of changed and AT&T and Spectrum fought it out for all of this up here that was unserved at one point. It pretty much cut All Points off at the knees. We were looking at like 1,100 homes. We feel like that was bloated. It was more realistically somewhere in the 700, 750 houses that they were going to serve. And the All Points contract was going to make you submit for grant funding, get awarded grant funding, and then match that grant funding. And then you had to wait till the funding even began. So if you wanted to go that route, you were going to be so long in the grant process that, we're going to be talking about a timeline here in a minute. You're going to have another year or two too. That's not what our citizens want nor need, and it's not what we want to do either. So this is what it looks like, the best we can tell today, of people. And I would say we're pretty spot on. There may be some building that has happened here in the last couple months that we're not really aware of, but this is what it looks like. So why are we here? We're here to ask, right? And here, of course, we're here to ask for money to do this. So go ahead and roll down there. So what is our strategy? The strategy is to ask the fiscal court to give $750,000 to Spectrum to construct a fiber network to Madison County that is currently unserved, which is 2,244 locations. We have a draft contract that we are working through. We'll put that in Dropbox for you to review, obviously, before you ever make a decision. We've seen it. We've read it, 8, 10, 12 times. Jenny and her team have taken a look at it as well. We've gone back and forth about legals and some information about that. So we're down to 2,244 locations that Spectrum has agreed to fund for $750,000. Now, if you've been following along at any point in the process over the last 3 years, we've had numbers from $14 million. That was Spectrum, wasn't it? Or AT&T? I can't remember. $14 million to solve this problem. One of them was $8 million, and this one was $12 million, right? And then We're gonna spend.
Was 60 million.
Yeah, Windstream was
69 was
69 million. Yeah.
69 million.
Windstream was going to come in and do it for almost 70 million, right? So again, the persistence and the perseverance and the kind of, I'll call it slow play, a little bit of making them kind of fight it out and want the business has paid off well for us. So the contract would be for $750,000 of ARPA funding to be spent on solving the broadband problem to those 2,244 locations. An important point of that is ARPA funds can only be spent for people that are unserved or underserved. Underserved is 25 meg or less. So what happens here is fancy math, as we'll call it, or fancy accounting. Only that $750,000 will be spent on residences that fall in that category. Spectrum's investment takes care of everything else. Okay, so you're going to be, how are they going to get that? Well, it's because they're investing $6.7 million, I believe, is what he told us yesterday, just to finish the 2,200. So you're putting in $750,000. They're putting up $6.6 million to finish it. If you just do the rough math, that's $334 per passing, and the national average, basically what we think is $3,600 per passing is what people are seeing and most communities are paying. Now, I argued yesterday that we can't really say that, which is why it's not on the slide, because we don't know which homes yet that our money would pay for versus what their money would pay for, so we just left it out of the conversation so it doesn't muddy the water. So Spectrum will fund the other unserved locations to insert universal broadband. So basically what it came down to is Spectrum, again, had built out, built in, and they left nobody with any choice because they pretty much had taken the entire market, and it only made sense at that point. We were all over All Points for many months, like, your number keeps dwindling. Your number's dwindling. At what point does it dwindle to where you're not interested? And I think just maybe a month ago, he finally told us that 700 was his number. Well, he was already, in our books, way below 700. So they were a really good partner for us. I just want to make sure we say that. They did a lot of great work with us. We formed a pretty good relationship for them. As Robin calls it, I had to break up with my friend this morning and tell him that, we're not going to be able to use their services. It just does not make sense. So that was hard to do, but this is the best answer. You can't solve this problem for $750,000 with any other provider. So I know people are sitting on the committee are like, man, we went round and round and round for this, and then we're right back to where we were when we began. But the story has changed. And through that perseverance and, just kind of waiting it out to see what's going to happen has come out in our favor, right? To only spend $750,000 is pretty unbelievable.
Well, and I think the other thing that's important from a Spectrum perspective of where we're at today is that it's up to $750,000. If they come back and they're like, you know what, there are 300 homes here and it gets to 2,500, we're still only spending $750,000. If it gets to, there's only 1,500 homes, we're only paying for 100 or 1,500 homes.
It'd be
So
less.
it'd be less than $750,000. So I think that's important because no other provider at any point in the conversation has been willing to say, hey, you won't spend more than this, even if there's more people, but you can spend less than this.
So the contract reads specifically that the $750,000 is a maximum with a reduction based on the number of homes served. So that is important. That was one thing that I hounded them on because we didn't believe it. And some of the frustration was a trust, and I feel like they probably earned our trust at this point a little bit, and we're comfortable with that they're going to serve it, and we're going to make sure that the contract that the judge signs is going to hold them to it. We're going to put the screws to them, right, and make sure that they're going to actually complete what they say they are. So,
Chris, I got a couple of questions.
Yep.
Number one, or one's a statement and two, one's a question. The mountain that you all have climbed here, I come from the telecom industry. The mountain that you all have climbed and solved based upon the expenditure that the county's going to make is almost unbelievable. You're to be credited because this is a game changer for Madison County.
Absolutely.
That's number one. Number two, if I'm not mistaken, the state backbone comes right down through our county as well. And so we've prepared, the fact that Governor Beshear and Hal Rogers had the foresight to do what they did, and now we can connect to that from an economic development perspective, we got a bright future.
Yeah. And, it's the team that made this happen. The judge kind of rearing the reins on me and Jill, like, no. Just wait a little longer.
It always takes a team to win.
It takes them to keep us because we were prepared 3 or 4 times to be like, let's just do it, right? Let's just go. We're tired of talking about it. We want to make this happen.
Because I was answering phone calls.
Yeah, well, I'm answering the phone calls.
You want phone calls to go away, didn't you?
And get the emails, right? And it is such a vital tool,
Drive will
right?
serve.
Hey, I got the EY a bunch, I'm telling you.
So, KY Wire does run right through the heart of the county. I wish it would be doing better than it is. It's not really providing a whole lot that it was promised, but maybe it's one of those 30-year investments that
It'll
in
pay
20
off
years,
eventually, but when you do it the way they've done it and they're trying to recoup their investments,
Yep.
it's gonna take some
They had a
time.
great idea followed by a poopy idea.
Yes.
And it kind of just muddied the whole thing.
Yep,
So,
yep.
how do we get there? This is the implementation plan, and you won't have to listen to me talk anymore today. Basically, at the February 14th meeting, you'll be presented with a resolution to approve the expenditure of $750,000 of ARPA funding. That'll be in the next fiscal court meeting coming, next week? That'll be in front of you. That'll give the judge authorization to finish up those contractual details with Spectrum Charter, make sure we sign that agreement with them to get started. They will start their field study again as soon as the judge signs the contract, and it will not be the same level of survey and time that All Points had invested in it. It will be something rather quick because they'll be able to take their data, compare it with our data, and the first time we'll actually be able to interact as that kind of team instead of, hey, I don't know about you, right? Like, I'm not giving you anything. We'll actually be able to sit down and talk through that and get a fairly good idea of how many homes are going to be served at that point if it's different than the 2244. In April of 2023, we will finalize those construction plans. Now, again, Spectrum owns this network. You do not own it or anything like that. It is all a Spectrum issue. You're just using your ARPA dollars to help them build it out. In May or sooner, they will begin the pole approval, which is the pole attachments is a pretty big investment for them to go out and try to get on those poles and negotiate contracts to get and hang fiber and figure out where they're going to bore it, wherever it may be. Construction will take anywhere from 18 to 24 months. Now, it should not be lost on you that because of the things we've done, we're already building to people. So to say Madison County hasn't done anything in broadband is not true. We fought for RDOF, we fought and wrote letters for KDBF, and we've been involved in all these conversations, and we've been pushing the existing providers as hard as we can to be like, what are you doing? You're right there. You need to go over there and get that guy. I don't know how many phone calls you've made to our representatives at these companies to push them, right? Do the right thing, build it out. So we've done plenty. You're still doing plenty to move forward. You're still talking, we're building to 2,000 people as we're talking today, right? These final 2,200 will come in the next 18 to 24 months, which will finalize everybody who will have access to it. The final caveat is after the 24 months is when construction will complete, the county will sign off on a document to end construction to say, yep, we agree, we think you got everybody. From that point forward, there's a 6-month window that is in the contract. Anybody that was missed or forgotten falls under that $750,000. So if we turn up a neighborhood somewhere that we forgot about, like we talked about today, not really, not in another world, not broadband, but let's just say a whole neighborhood popped up somewhere that we didn't know about and there was 50 homes in there, they would fall underneath the $750,000 as well. Now, one thing that I don't think we talked about in there for some reason, the 3,000 feet off the road. We must have deleted that or I skimmed past it or something.
Well, we did. We talked about that yesterday, Chris. But that would be something that we would bring back to the fiscal court at a later date. That until we know how many that potentially is, again, get correct data of what that might mean.
So the point I was trying to make is that
in the
Spectrum
contract.
will do a standard installation, and I need to circle that back to you. The standard installation as it is today, it was 500 feet prior to COVID. The new standard is your 1,500 feet from what they call a point of presence, which is either the pole or whatever. You can call it the center of the road if you want to, but that's really not the truth. Wherever their connection point is today is 1,500 feet. We have written in our contract and submitted to them that they do 3,000 feet. So anybody that is 3,000 feet off the road would be covered under the $750,000. Now, Chris, you know good and well there's lots of people that live 3,000 feet off the road, right? What are you going to do about them? Hopefully, at the end of the day, and the judge just brought it up a little bit, we can come back to you once we have a better idea and make a proposal to capture those folks. Because the one thing that bothers me and it keeps me up at night is that, one thing that we left out of this was that this also serves people that are already in the existing footprint. So Spectrum has an existing footprint today. Can you roll back to the map a little bit? Probably better off. One more before we show that. So this, and I know this is a weird map, but this was already served by Spectrum or AT&T, and we'll say Spectrum because they basically co-locate with each other. There's folks that live on these roads that because they live so far off the road, they're in the service footprint. They're deemed service by the FCC, right? But they're so far off the road. How many times have you guys heard they want $15,000 to run it to my house, or they want $10,000, they want $8,000? People don't want to pay that, right? The funny thing about the Spectrum contract is that 2,244 includes anybody inside the city limits or outside of the city limits that are not connected today. So if a citizen lives 1,500 feet off the road and, you know, if Spectrum was wanting to charge them $10,000 to do it, well, because of the contract, now they're going to go ahead and backfeed and fill those in, okay? We're trying to get that to 3,000. I don't know if we'll win. We may get some subset of 2,000 or 2,200 feet. They'll probably make us run some analytics with Clay because we can tell how far they off the road and give them an estimate of how many of those homes it looks like. So keep in mind, not only have you solved the broadband problem in the unincorporated areas of the county, you're essentially throwing a bone out into the city limits because this contract will allow those folks that had a cost barrier to join. They were in the footprint, but they weren't going to pay $15,000. Will now be in there if they're under that 3,000 foot limit if we get it pushed through. So all that to be said that we do know at the end of that there may be outliers. You get 6 months at the end of construction to make sure that we got everybody and kind of capture anybody that's in there. Say you were building a house in the process of that, right? You could get pulled up into that as well. And then hopefully at the end of that 6 months, we'll know how many people are left that are further than that 3,000 feet. We would come back and present some sort of other plan for a little extra money to capture those folks, whatever that may look like. There may not be any, who knows? But that's something that we're just not ready to present.
Go back to that map, if you don't mind, Clay, that you just had. So one of the areas I want to point out, Chris, you pointed out there, Golden Leaf.
Mm-hmm.
See Duncannon coming across over to your right. This right down that red area right there. So all that red area right there is actually Duncannon. That's out there at Golden Leaf, Tom. You've probably gotten a lot of calls about people not being able to have internet and stuff, and it's due to the railroad and being able to cross the railroad with that fiber. So this plan, I mean, all that's kind of in behind Sherwin-Williams, just for reference point.
It's all the city limits.
It's all in the city inside the city limits of Richmond, but all that area would be covered in this plan. Correct, Chris?
Correct. Yeah. So if you go back to your current unserved and slide the map. Yeah.
So that could be a headline.
Yeah.
So this is what it looks like today, right? This is probably that
So
pocket.
that's that red pocket. That's that Golden Leaf area, that development, like where Acadian Cove and.
So let me get this right. So we're working hard for all the citizens of Madison County, whether they're in the county or city limits. So we're not taking it and just trying to do what's in Madison County. We're trying to take care of every citizen within the way we structurally and visionarily look at what's needed in our county. So we're not in our silo.
Yep. This contract allowed us to reach.
Job well done.
Very well said.
Job well done.
This contract
sounds like a
allowed us
good
to
idea.
serve everybody. in
Well, that's what we
Madison
should. We're government. We shouldn't just say, this is ours, we don't want to share.
There were so many places, Steve, that was just like that he was just talking about. You know, I had 3 or 4 areas that were like that. Off of Old Town Branch is an area that was like that. Taylor's Fork Road out off of Will Green, another area that was like that. That you just they went past it. It was in their area, but
Concord
they didn't.
Road.
They did not go to it.
Concord.
Listen, I used to run
Concord
a
Road.
telecom
You
company
got
in
one at
Pikeville.
Concord.
When he
What's
talked
the
about
catch?
going up a
This
hog.
all sounds so good. What's the catch?
At this point, Billy Ray, there's probably always a catch, but I'm going to say there's no catch because of the due diligence and the perseverance that we've taken and the length of time that we have gone through this and not tried to just knee jerk and pull off. Because I'll be honest with you, when we said Spectrum the first time, we were all like, no way, don't trust them. There ain't no way we're gonna go that route, right? And now they've kind of proven it, and they've gotten to this point, and I think it's because of the strategicness of what they did, right? They used federal dollars to build all the way out here. They then were able to get that state money to build this whole corridor. It left you with no choice. Now, the only bad side of that is, guess what? They're going to be the only provider in a lot of these areas, but
Is that the catch?
that's probably the catch. But we didn't talk anything about it.
But is that a catch, though?
I was going to say the alternatives are AT&T and Windstream.
Or none.
This maybe shouldn't be on the record, but I don't care if it is. Neither one of them's worth a shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, please don't make that the headline.
They're probably none.
AT&T stock price is what it is.
Bad business
Please,
decisions.
you know, have discussion after.
No, Billy Ray,
This is a work session,
I'm a
right?
lot like Billy Ray. When
It's
we
still a
first sat in those
public
first
meeting.
meetings and they come in and people made pitches and proposals to us as high as $69 million, I like to crap. I mean,
That's all.
I mean, considering the amount of money that we had.
But that's the way it's been, Tom. They want you to pay them to do what they should be doing.
Well, I mean, and there were numerous ones.
But that's the way they work.
That's
He said
exactly
it.
I've been in the business.
He
I
said it right
understand.
there.
They're just ridiculous.
The government is now solving the problem that they should have solved a long time ago.
10 years ago, AT&T told Kentucky, "Oh, we'll provide internet up these hollers in eastern Kentucky." Bullshit.
So what you're getting is fiber to the premise to all these places, 1 gig by 1 gig symmetrical service. That's 1,000 meg up, 1,000 meg down. That's what people these days think they need and want. We can argue that all day long. Most of them will not take that speed. They'll take this somewhere in the 250. So we'll be fiber backed. It's going to be a great asset for them when they put this in there. It's a great asset for our property values when people move in, because now you're going to have quality, affordable broadband.
It ought to be a good thing for each
The other
other.
thing that they're doing that is in the contract,
definitely good
so when you
plan.
review it, is there's an addendum at the bottom down there that if they get 5 counties, and this is not really tied to the regional proposal, it was just a number that somebody came up with a spectrum. If they get 5 counties to sign on, which we would be the 4th, they're going to do an investment on the existing copper network. So they're going to make sure that everything that is already in the copper network inside those city limits is upgraded in the next 3 years over this contract as well. You're not paying for that, but that's their dedication to the, I guess, providing internet to Madison County and being the biggest providers here, is that they're going to continue to invest in the existing infrastructure. The second thing on there was the digital literacy fund, which they really hounded on it, and they didn't even write it in their own contract. Again, if there's 5 people in there, they'll invest $1 million into the digital literacy fund, which is, going to go and help kids how to use computers and all those kinds of tools that are there to help them. So not only are you providing access, you're going to also help invest in the tools to teach these folks how to use these tools effectively and how to better themselves. So that's a very important way to look at it.
Is the fund still available, Chris, for the low income?
So it is no longer called EPP or ECP. It is now called APP. ACP. Yeah, so many acronyms. I don't even know. Yes, and it is basically Spectrum. I'm not going to say because of our contract, because that's not true, but because of this whole way things have come out, they offer a $35 plan that is 100 meg by 10, I think. Basically, that's a $35 investment from the federal government. Basically gives you those folks a $0 bill on their internet.
Billy Ray, if the federal government hadn't put the printing press in motion and given so much money out and given so much money to the state, and these 2 forms of funding hadn't come in my opinion, we wouldn't be sitting here today. We'd be sitting here saying we got a problem, but we got no solution.
Yep.
Well, stop right now, because if you say anything else better, it's going to be like one of them TV commercials that says,
But wait, there's more. And again, what's the catch? I don't know. I'm sure there probably is
That's
a
the
catch.
catch, Billy Ray, is the free money.
Do a lot of work.
It's been a lot of diligence on everybody's part just to make sure and paying attention. And, I got the opportunity to speak in front of KCO and talk about broadband and talk to these 4 big providers, right? And kind of maybe try to influence or whatever you want to do. And
Some tough conversations.
yeah, and some awkward, tough conversations with people about it, right? So you'll get a copy of the resolution. Obviously, it just said, you can read it when you get in your Dropbox. It's going to give the judge the authority to sign the agreement, and up to $750,000 in ARPA funding will come on to do that.
Bless you.
So the contract and the resolution will be in your Dropbox prior to court. We'll try to keep you with the latest editions of the contract as we kind of work through the details with them. They have not responded back with some of the things that we demand. So we'll work through theirs, but they seem to be doing whatever people want to do. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But any questions about the technology or the why or anything like that, I think we've talked it today.
Well, just to comment, Chris, is that the goal when we went into the room for the first day for everybody that was on that team, Jill, the judge, Chris, Bert, Kenny.
Yeah, Kenny was over there.
And maybe one I've forgotten, but anyway, the goal was to make sure that when we finished this, that everybody had fiber. The goal was not to leave anybody out. And so, this, to where we're at, given that very first, few meetings that we had, this is just amazing. And we'll thank you. I know you've done most of I would say most, but the team, you guys have done a lot of the heavy carrying to get back to where we were from where we started at. And this is just amazing that we can get away with $750,000 and provide that service with maybe a little additional as we go along to get everybody, because that, the goal of RDOF, the goal of the KBDF funds was to put it to the house. go to the end of the roads, not go down to the communities and stop. To put it out to everywhere, and so that was the goal.
You're providing the
you've done a
opportunity
great
for
job.
everybody to connect.
Yep.
One person too don't want to leave out is Clay.
Absolutely.
Clay's done an excellent job. I know Clay's been with us for a long time in the county, but a short time with Madison County Fiscal Court. But he's come in and hit the ground running and helped a lot with the technology and the overlays and doing the research and stuff, working with the providers to use their information to really get us as factual of information as we can. When this first came out, I told our team, I was like, man, how can we present this information to the fiscal court when we know that it's terrible information? And so, by reiterating what Chris said about slow playing this a little bit, and to really diving in on factual information has really helped us get to where we are today, and it's really, really exciting. The next steps for us is to present the fiscal court with a resolution at the next court meeting, if it's the pleasure of the court, and to allow me to final the negotiations. We are going to go ahead and put this draft resolution up on Dropbox with the contract, the draft contract, to allow you all to go ahead and look at it. But our plans, unless you all tell me otherwise, is to have this on the fiscal court agenda for next Tuesday. Please, you all take the opportunity, if it's your pleasure to move forward, to look at that. Give us any of your feedback that we can work with Spectrum on. The other part of this too is kind of, I think, a second phase, and I always like being transparent and upfront. We will bring kind of another thing back to the court, which is on what Chris was talking about over that 3,000 feet to the home. I did not want to present this to you all today because right now it's just kind of the idea format, and I didn't feel like we knew enough and had really a good game plan to present that to you. But from a concept standpoint, we would want to take a little bit more of ARPA funds to kind of put in a pot for those that are over 3,000 feet to their home to potentially go through
application.
I don't really want to call it a grant fund, but an application process to be able to get some funds to help them offset if they do live way off the road. And so that'll be I think a kind of a second phase to this that we would bring back and present to you all at a later date. I think with how efficient we've got with $750,000. I mean, originally we thought we were going to be spending, what did we say originally? If we could spend $3, $4, $5 million, we'll be doing great, and so we're really doing
I've
great.
got another question. This takes care of past issues for the most part. What about the future? What about growth?
So that's
what about subdivision?
That's a conversation we have had.
What about industrial
working
parks?
through it? That the planning needs to somehow wrap the providers into it. And if you're going to come in here, then we're going to make sure that internet's going into these new subdivisions, which it largely does.
And
Just like
industrial
Chris
parks.
mentioned, it's the new water and electric. I mean, nobody's going to buy a house in a new subdivision if they can't get broadband there.
No,
There's
I
other
understand.
developers know that's just another.
And now you've built the
utility they have to
infrastructure
provide.
that they can tie that subdivision in, where maybe that wouldn't have existed prior to
Yes,
this agreement. So
Now they're going to be
really
buying all that vacant land to get to those rural places, so now there's going to be there. And the other thing is that a lot of those companies are part of the DRT, which is the Development Review Team. So like when somebody brings a plat in to go through that site development process and get it approved, there's representatives from these providers that are actually, part of that team in saying, and they're signing off on the plat, saying that, hey, we'll run fiber or
Yeah, I was going to say there
they've
shouldn't be
approved
any
it or whatever.
issues. Anything that we do from the economic development or residential or whatever, it should be a mandate that they have to come in and provide service to our community.
Yeah.
Does it mandate them right
I don't
now?
know if it's a mandate or
It
not.
does.
No, it doesn't mandate.
It does.
Again, the market's going to
Right,
drive that.
right. I think they'll go for new revenue.
You wouldn't develop a subdivision right now if you didn't put a water line.
Right, right.
It's the same with broadband.
The topic is such on the forefront that a lot of these people, Bert's he was part of the committee. Hey, somebody's got to provide internet here, right? Like,
That-
And in some of our conversations with the providers, the AT&T, Spectrum, we've had those conversations because they're building in those new areas, and that's what has created these gaps. Is that they're out on Boonesboro Road is the perfect example. You know, Seven Oaks has service because it's new and being developed, but the older neighborhood across the street did not. And so I think that
No, that's all I
those are
want,
the
that's all I want, is
conversations.
I want us as a government to ensure that we're taking care of the things that we need to, and I know we will. Moving forward, and that these providers need to be our partners and bring access to our citizens and industrial development and other things.
Yeah, I would think we have way more conversation with those folks now than we ever did, right?
They
At
now
least
answer what we
how about
thought.
a meaningful conversation? We probably talked to them, but it wasn't about anything like this, right? So we're in a really good place, and pretty unbelievable to see a $750,000 price tag to solve.
And one thing I love about it too is it in this contract, it's May of 2025. I mean, you know, we're 2 years out, and our county's going to have internet run to it. You know, so you know, that's not dragging this thing out over 10 years or 8 years or whatever. I mean, because the demand's now. So, all right. Any other questions, comments? Unless I hear otherwise, this will be on fiscal court next Tuesday. All right. All right. And moving on, next on the agenda is our next meeting, which is February the 14th, 2023. That will be in Berea at the City Council Chambers. Again, that's at 9:30 on February the 14th, 2023. I need a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please. Or how about this? All in favor, please state by saying aye. Aye. Seeing everybody's an aye, there's no reason.
The eyes are above the nose.
That's
That's
right.
the way it should be.
That's right. Meeting is adjourned.
Good job, Chris.
Thanks, sir.
Good job, Chris.
Thank you. Appreciate it.